Hi, welcome to another episode of Bethany Talks About Stuff. I'm your host, Bethany F. DeVors, author of the Sea of Dressing Chronicles, available from Amazon. And today I have with me my repeat offender guest, Rick DeVors. Say hello.
Hello.
And Rick is here acting as a legal expert for us today. And just give us
I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a cop.
He's going to tell us a little bit about his experience.
As a cop, not a lawyer.
If that's what floats your boat.
Because it would be against the law for me to say I'm a lawyer and not be one. Hi, I'm Rick. I'm a cop. I've been a cop for a very long time, for 36 years now, as a matter of fact. Currently work at a undisclosed law enforcement agency in the state of South Carolina as the commander of the homicide unit.
I said, I'm going to introduce you. He's like, you can't say where I work. I said, okay, I'll let you tell your own experience. So today, we're going to give you a visual representation of today's topic. That was pathetic.
Is that better?
You should have swatted the front.
Here, let's try it again.
Oh,
Ready?
no.
Ready? Police car. Pew pew America.
Today we're talking about swatting.
You're welcome. I thought of that all by myself.
He said, I've got props. I said, what are you talking about? Today's topic is actually serious, and it's not necessarily pop culture, but I feel like it's important because I think we've seen an uptick in swatting instances, and if any of you are familiar with Tim Pool, whose show is Timcast IRL, which, you know, take him or leave him, doesn't matter, he did get swatted live during a live stream, and these can be deadly situations.
Was that recently?
Yeah.
Really?
Like in the last couple of weeks.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be good because I've talked to people about it. They're like, "Well, what is that?" I say, "Oh, did y'all see that Tim Pool got swatted?" And they're like, "What is that?" So
I've watched Tim Pool before. I mean, he's like I said, some things I agree, some I don't.
Yeah, that's how I am about a lot of people. Like I like some of.
He doesn't like cops. As I mentioned, I am one.
Yeah. Well, I like Eric July, but he's also not a huge fan of cops either. So, like, some things I really, really agree with him, and some things I don't. So, it is what it is. So, but in any case, it wouldn't matter who it was or what their political leanings. Swatting can be very dangerous. So, I'm going to read a definition from Wikipedia because we're not an academic source, so we can cite it.
It's the most reliable site on all of the internet.
But I think they summed it up really well. So it says, swatting is a criminal harassment tactic of deceiving an emergency service via such means as hoaxing an emergency services dispatcher into sending a police and emergency service response team to another person's address. This is triggered by false reporting of a serious law enforcement emergency such as a bomb threat, murder, hostage situation, or a false report of a mental health emergency, such as reporting that a person is allegedly suicidal or homicidal and may or may not be armed. So basically, somebody gets mad at somebody else, they call the police and say, hey, there's a guy with a gun holding people hostage at 123 Sunshine Way, and the police go there thinking they're going into a violent hostage situation, and the people at that house have no idea what's going on, so they might think they're being burglarized or whatever, and it has had lethal consequences in the past. So we're going to talk about the repercussions, legal repercussions of swatting, just talk about some instances and what we think, we can do to combat it, which, oh gosh, I didn't turn my phone off. You grab my phone. Nope, that's the Amazon Echo. That's the phone. We also want to talk about what can possibly be done, which I don't know a lot, but some people have some ideas, and we're going to kind of bounce this off what Rick thinks will work as well. So I will stop talking and give you an opportunity to talk about what you found in South Carolina in particular. So
yeah, I mean, it's a topic Matter of fact, I had breakfast with a fellow law enforcement officer this morning and asked him if he knew what swatting was, and he said, this is kind of what gave me the idea for this. He thought I was talking, I was going to come on a podcast and talk about swatting flies.
Really? He didn't know what swatting was?
He had no clue. And I asked several of my coworkers, and they had no idea either. So it's something that I think you see it more in urban areas than rural areas. I work in a rural area. We're in South Carolina, even though we have several major cities, metropolitan areas, not as large as New York or Seattle or some of these other locations. But we have had instances of it here in South Carolina. And so I just went through and did a Google search and found a couple instances over the last couple of years that have happened here in the state of South Carolina. One of those I found was in Lexington, South Carolina, which is right across the river from where we're located doing this podcast. And it just says between December the 12th, 2020 and December the 14th, 2020, the Lexington County Sheriff's Office Communication Center, their dispatchers, received 6 different calls from a 12-year-old, later discovered to be a 12-year-old. These calls were about a man standing in a yard with a weapon at a child's bedroom window, a man holding a family hostage with weapon and explosives, bomb threat at home with hostage, domestic dispute involving weapons and hostage, and it goes on. And you can only imagine when you get a call like that as a law enforcement officer and it comes through your emergency dispatch, you're going to respond with all available units. You're going to respond with all the armament that you have and all the resources that you have. And these poor people have, I'm not sure if it was in the city of Lexington or if it was the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, but you know, they have armed law enforcement officers showing up probably with weapons drawn in those particular circumstances and had to try to explain their way out of what was a perceived threat, which was a non-threat. So obviously that's a problem.
Right, and you're talking about not only is it a problem for the poor people being swatted, but you're also taking valuable time and resources of law enforcement from actual real crime happening, that people are seriously in danger, and the police have been dispatched somewhere else because they're getting a similar threat that's not real.
Right.
So you're talking about a lot of aspects that are very dangerous and bad when it comes to swatting, not just, oh, these people had this, cops show up at their house. And in this case, it didn't sound like anybody was hurt.
No, thankfully no one was hurt in these instances. The other instance that I only just pulled up 2 from South Carolina, but this was from 2019 in the Myrtle Beach area, and anyone in North America knows where Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is.
Unless you live under a rock.
Right. The article starts off by a Myrtle Beach family is still in shock after a fake 911 call indicated that a man had just shot his wife. This was a swatting call. Came into Horry County Dispatch. They send a bunch of units there, and the ironic thing about this is the house that they went to was a retired law enforcement officer's house. And he's forced out of his house by some of his former colleagues at gunpoint because they received a call that he had shot his wife. And obviously that was a traumatic experience for all parties involved as well. So it happens more, apparently it happens more in, like I said, urban areas, larger areas, Hollywood, places like that. But it does happen here in South Carolina as well.
Right. So I had a couple of examples of swatting. I had heard some of these already. People have died in these confrontations. So we've got one where, this is the one that gets me the most, I think, like bothers me the most, is that in April 2020, Mark Herring, a 60-year-old man from Bethpage, Tennessee, died of a heart attack after police responded to a false report of a woman being killed at his home. Now, that's awful. What makes it even worse is he was being harassed because somebody wanted to use his Twitter handle.
Yeah.
They swatted him over a Twitter handle, and the man died. One of the fatal ones that I was looking at was in December of 2017. This is in Wichita. A man named Andrew Finch was killed by a Wichita police officer because he was swatted. They shot him on the site and he died at the hospital. But it really was a case of mistaken identity too. I mean, none of it's good, but sometimes it just seems like extra bad. And it was over a $1.50 bet in a Call of Duty multiplayer game, these kids got mad at each other. So the instigator, or the one who actually did the swatting, got a 20-year life sentence, as he absolutely should. I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for people who do these pranks. It's not funny. I think we should be throwing the book at them. Sorry. If that offends you, I'm sorry.
Agree.
That's just how it is. Because these people, this is not a game. It is not funny. And, I think a lot of stuff is funny I probably shouldn't think is funny. This is not one of them. This is not one of them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think people understand the cost to the taxpayers when you have incidents like this, and you're allocating all these resources. You may be spinning up your SWAT teams and different specialized unit, hostage negotiators, whatever it is, and you're tying up a lot of resources for that agency on an instance that is completely false. I did read an article where the state of California, sometimes they get things right out there.
It's pretty rare.
Yeah, it is rare, but they occasionally get it rare. And if you are convicted of one of these swatting hoaxes, they automatically, you have a $10,000 liability placed on you for the resources that were wasted during that SWAT call. So.
See, I think that's fair. You're
I
right.
agree.
Like a stop clock gets right twice a day.
Right. Yeah, well, they got that one right. I agree.
But that's absolutely, and they probably, as I was reading through some of the articles, and I would encourage you, like I don't normally steer people toward Wikipedia, but they actually have a very good entry for swatting. And one of the things they talked about was how often celebrities get swatted. Like it's a real problem. I mean, just being a celebrity doesn't mean it's okay to swat somebody. Same thing with politicians on both sides of the aisle, as a matter of fact.
I think you and I probably read the same article, but I think there was a list of almost 20 different celebrities who had already had this done to them, which is insane. So you can only imagine if it was in wherever, Beverly Hills or L.A. or whatever that jurisdiction was, what kind of resources they had to go to, especially thinking it was a high-profile case like that as well.
Right.
And it turns out to be nothing. So a lot of taxpayer dollars wasted.
Yeah, and I can't think of anything about this scenario that's good. And so I actually was, like you said, we probably read the same article. He showed up with his printed page, and I'm like, I think I printed that exact same page. Some of the lawmakers who've been trying to enact legislation to have stiffer penalties for swatting have been swatted during the process of trying to enable that legislation. I'm like, I don't know if y'all thought that was going to change their minds. I'm sure that just steeled their resolve. It's just so dumb. But
unfortunately, I think there's not many places that have specific statutes that deal with swatting per se. I think you have to use other resources. I know I did read in that article there was one, I believe it was a congresswoman who was trying to get a federal statute passed. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's I'm all about states' laws and rights, but I do think there are times a federal statute is proper. I would say this is one of those times. I can't imagine any wiggle room here where you'd want swatting's okay in one state and not the other.
Well, I mean, and that's the problem you run into. Every state's laws are vastly different. Just our neighboring states, North Carolina and Georgia, their laws are so much different than South Carolina law is. And it's hard for us to get on the same page as neighboring states. But if you had a unified law for something like this, the good thing about this is it's fairly rare in the grand scheme of things. I think I just heard that it was like 400 cases last year that the FBI reported. So thankfully it's not as widespread, but still it's enough to cause, when people start dying, we have a problem.
Sure. Well, you said there's 400 cases that the FBI reported. I wonder if there would be a way to get at the local.
Well, and the problem with that reporting is if the FBI knows about it, and the FBI, if you don't know, is responsible for all crime statistics for the United States of America. Each state reports to the FBI their crime stats. The problem is because there's no specific statutes, some states may be reporting it as a swatting and others may not. So there's probably more instances of it, but that's the ones that we know about.
I mean, I would imagine it's not much more widespread
right,
than those.
But that's probably low ball figure.
Right. Well, that makes sense. I feel like I should have known that the FBI is in charge of keeping
And
track.
now you know. That's why I'm here. You're welcome, world.
And in case you didn't notice, you know, for Betty White, all my Golden Girls stuff today. Anyway, swatting is very serious.
I wore blue because I'm a
Don't
cop.
don't do it. Don't wear blue either.
Yes, we're blue. It's lovely.
It doesn't look as blue in person. It's kind of like a green blue. I will knock
That's
you in the
blue.
head right on the. Tell them how you got that fly swatter.
I'd like to thank the Camden Dollar General for donating this to our cause today. I told them I needed to do a little interactive role playing, whatever we're doing here, demonstration. And they literally gave me their fly swatter off the wall for free because it was the only one in the store.
He
Thank
said,
you.
he said, do you guys have any fly swatters? And then you say somebody from the back yelled, just give them the one off the wall.
The manager said, just give them the blue one on the wall. Thanks for shopping at Dollar General. You're welcome, ma'am. You're welcome. And thank you.
So there you go.
But I am a VIP customer at Dollar General, so I just want to throw that out there.
Well, I also just want to point out that he's like, oh, it's never been used. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I see bug guts on it, as he was swatting at my food before we came up here to record.
I mentioned it was free.
I guess you can't be too picky when it's free.
There you go.
So, sorry, back on track. So what can you tell us about the South Carolina laws, since we're in South Carolina?
Well, in South Carolina, again, like most jurisdictions, we have no specific laws that cover swatting. But we do have laws that you can be charged with. Anybody who calls in, we're all familiar with people calling in the bomb threats and prank calls to dispatch. Well, we do have a statute in South Carolina called unlawful use of 911 system. That is a misdemeanor in South Carolina. You can be, if you're found guilty, you can get up to 6 months in prison and a $200 fine.
So what if that call turns into a lethal incident?
Well, that changes the complexity of the situation. Believe it or not, if you were to do a classic swatting call, where you call in accusing somebody of doing something with malicious intent, police show up, the confrontation turns deadly, and you are tracked down, you can literally be charged with murder in South Carolina for one of these swatting calls going badly. There's a case, don't want to get too technical, there's case law in this state called State versus Young, where even if you didn't directly intend on killing someone, but you were involved in that process, you can be charged with murder. So technically, you could be charged with murder in this state. Also, we do have a statute. Most people are familiar and know that it's against the law to call in a bomb threat, but the statute actually covers bomb threats and terroristic threats. And so you could potentially be charged under that statute as well, depending on what the circumstance was.
That makes sense.
And that's obviously murder. Obviously, you can get 25 to life in prison, or the death penalty, depending on. Well, we say we still have it in South Carolina, but we just don't use it.
That's because we ran out of the
We
stuff
ran
for
out of
lethal
drugs,
injection. But they're talking about, didn't they just approve doing the electric chair again?
Yes, they approved. I believe they approved doing a firing squad.
Oh, that's it. It was the firing squad. It was the firing squad they were going to bring back.
I volunteered. They turned me down. Anyway.
Well, I'm glad you didn't volunteer as tribute.
No, I volunteered to be on the firing squad. The pew ends. Okay. Bomb threats, you can get up to 15 years in prison, believe it or not, in South Carolina for that. So it's no joke. It's no laughing matter.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be. I'm sorry. Like I said, sometimes I look at laws and think, well, that's kind of severe, you know. But this is not one of those cases because it really is very dangerous. And it's just so stupid.
It is stupid.
I mean, and again, just like the people swatting the legislators, who are trying to pass laws against swatting, I'm like, what was your end goal there? Either to get the person killed or to deter them? I mean, either way, you're just proving the point of why we need the law to deter swatting. So I wanted to also take a couple of minutes to talk about what we think would be helpful. So, excuse me, don't do it. That's number one.
You know,
Like,
I think swatting is kind of like bomb threats. There's really there's no proactive way of deterring what happens. I think the best way to deter people from doing that is very harsh punishment. And I think they need to be made examples of. And what people don't realize as well, you're not only criminally liable for these kinds of actions, you're also civilly liable. If people get hurt, property gets damaged, resources get used, you can be sued, and a lot of your goodies can be taken away for some foolishness like this.
yeah, you know, I'm not a huge fan of making examples, but this would be a case where I think that's appropriate, you know, because
I think each and every one of these should be made an example of.
well, yeah,
honestly.
absolutely. I mean, I think they should just all, like I said, this is one of those things, and maybe it's because I do have an internet show that I'm like, I got no tolerance for this. And everybody I watch, I don't know anybody that I watch that thinks this is funny. Like, and I watch a lot of YouTube and Rumble shows, y'all.
Well-
And it's just not, it's just, I think it bothers me not only because obviously I do this, but also because it is on the rise, you know, and with unfortunately, you know, between online gaming and online streaming and Twitch and YouTube and all of it, you know, there's just so many more people now online. And so I feel like is a problem that could continue to grow out of control. So I guess part of what I'm hoping with this is to raise some awareness, number one, of what it is. And number two, if you're somebody who thinks that's going to be funny, or you know somebody who might think that's funny, you may want to share with them that they could go to prison forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's just, people need to know what the consequences are in an effort to deter them from thinking that's okay. So but one of the other things we talked about, and Rick kind of went like, but I had seen an article, and Seattle's another one of those places where I'm like, really? But I thought this seemed like a good idea. So they have two programs. One is called, and this might be outdated information, but it is of the time of the article. One was called Smart 911. So you can go on a registry and say, hey, I'm disabled. I can't get to the door quickly. If I call 911, please let the responders know I can't get to the door or whatever. Which not going to help you as much in a swatting situation, but I'm like, that's actually a neat idea.
I mean, I think most emergency communication centers now have
Something like
that
that.
kind of. You have notes when an address comes up, and if someone is requested or if law enforcement has been on the scene before, we can actually add notes to what we call the CAD, the computer automated dispatch, which makes notations like that, like this is a senior citizen or this is someone with a physical disability that could not answer the door themselves. You need to make note of that. And so that's a good program, and I think it's probably more widespread now than it was
Right.
at the time you read that article. So.
Well, they have another program. The name of the program is Rave Facility. And this is a program where you can go online and list yourself as somebody who thinks they could potentially be the recipient of swatting calls, because you are a streamer or whatever. And the idea is that if somebody calls 911 and lists your address, then the dispatcher would go ahead and dispatch emergency responders to the address, but at the same time when they would check the registry to see if this is a potential swatting target. And that way they could let the law enforcement or first responders who are on their way know, hey, this could be a swatting, just be mindful. So I thought that actually sounded like a good idea to me. But we kind of had some back and forth about whether we thought that would be super effective or not. And it does add another step for poor dispatchers who are already trying to juggle a lot of stuff.
Well, it does, but it's also you cannot, and having been a patrol officer obviously at different points in my career, you cannot have too much information when you're rolling up onto a scene. And the more information you have, the more likely you are to make good, solid judgments based on fact, other than just supposition that you get from an anonymous phone call. So anything like that I think would be helpful.
So So I think that'd be something maybe we could strive for in our local communities to talk about. Because again, this kind of streaming between Twitch, YouTube, Rumble, all of these, so many more people are doing this. And the minute your face or name is out there, you are a potential target. So one of the people I watch, I think he said he's been swatted something like 20 times now.
That's crazy.
And I promise you, he's not even that controversial. He talks about pop culture. Now, he puts a political spin on it, so anytime politics makes it worse. But he really is not, like, I would almost say he's almost a little too liberal for me. Like, so we're not even talking about somebody who's uber conservative or anything, or uber liberal. Like, he's kind of middle of the road.
You get extremists on both ends, and
Right,
they do
right.
crazy things.
And I don't think it's, obviously, I think it's okay for nobody. Absolutely nobody. But it's crazy. Like, he's like, his dog has been stolen, and like, it's crazy. And I'm just like, this is a sad statement about our society at this point, that people think that kind of stuff's okay.
I think I read somewhere too that a lot of the swatting, especially with the Hollywood celebrities, has more to do, and some with not celebrities, but people who are just happen to be in the headlines at the time, has more to do with doxing them and just outing them and outing their addresses and things like that as well.
We could do a whole different thing about doxing.
But there is some correlation between the two as well. So.
Sure. You know, so anyway, that's basically, that's about almost all I have to say about that. You have anything to add about that topic? Don't.
You don't want me to do another demonstration?
Go ahead.
Wee, 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 wee.
He's 11 years older than me. I just want to point that out.
I just turned 31.
And I'm...
No, you wish you were 20.
No, I don't, actually. Unlike a lot of people, I didn't actually enjoy my 20s that much.
I dyed all this. It's just a look.
Oh, I thought you were saying you dyed it when you were in your 20s.
No, I am.
I was like, did you
I'm
go gray
31
that
and
early?
It's not gray. It's silver. There's a reason the waitresses call me the Silver Fox.
Oh, gross.
You're welcome.
Oh, gross. Anyway, I hope that you've learned something about swatting today. If, pass the information along, share this with people you think might be interested. Again, I was just shocked by how many people did not know what this was. So hopefully this will educate some people and not educate them about how to do it. I did worry about that a little bit, like, now you know. But now you also know the consequences.
Well, I mean, I hope it educates people in the law enforcement community, because there's really a lack of knowledge there as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, I'm interested to see your comments. Have you seen anybody that you watch or follow talk about being swatted? Do you have any stories? And what do you think? Do you have any ideas about what could be done? Again, it is hard to be proactive in that sense, but, a good brainstorming never hurts. So, can you hear the dogs crying? I got them locked up today so they don't tear stuff down. But they don't like it. Anyway, leave us comments. Let us know what you think. And, of course, like, share, subscribe, all the stuff you're supposed to do on the internet. And that's it for now.
Bye.
Bye.